My name is Donna Schwartz, and I'm 25. The first time I was told I wasn't enough, I was 10 and holding a report card like it might explode. One subject, one letter. Math. A high C that wanted so badly to be a B, it practically leaned toward it. My dad looked at it the way people look at water damage. Sigh first, bill later. We expected more, he said, like I'd broken a contract. Mom didn't speak. She walked to the living room, unplugged my game console with surgical calm, and slid it into her closet. Click, door, lock, sentence. Until your grades improve, she said, like the judge, the jury, and the locksmith. By dinner, the news had traveled faster than prayer requests. Aunties whisper, church chuckles. Poor Donna, so bright. If only she didn't play so many games. They never said it to my face. They saved it for plastic forks and potato salad. Shame has a way of seating you at the kids' table, even when you're old enough to pass the salt. My younger brother, Lucas, was the golden weather system in our house. Perfect handwriting, perfect hair, perfect attendance. The day he got an A- in science, Mom emailed the teacher like there'd been a glitch in the grading matrix. Dad said, "He's built different," as if I were the test model that rolled off the line a little crooked. I used to joke, if Lucas sneezed, we'd frame the tissue. If I sneezed, I was told to wash my hands and study. By middle school, I stopped bringing report cards home. Not because I was failing, I wasn't. I just learned that good was a moving goalpost. Straight B's, you can do better. 1A, why not all? The game console never returned. I bought a second-hand one with babysitting money, hid it under my bed, and played at 2 a.m. with headphones so tight they left half-moon dents on my cheeks. It was the only space I felt like myself, quiet, focused, in charge of my own levels. One night, the door cracked open and Lucas peered in. Pajamas, perfect posture. "Mom says you'll never get into college if you keep playing," he whispered. He was 9. "Thanks for the update," I said, thumb hovering over pause. He wasn't wrong. I didn't get into a university, but not for the reason they told themselves. High school brought a new gravity. While everyone else courted SAT gods, I learned the religion of heat. I cooked because someone had to. Eggs, grilled cheese, ramen with ambition, pancakes on Saturdays, when Mom was at yoga and Dad was calculating someone else's taxes. At first, it was survival. Then it became language. The first time my best friend's mom bit into my meatball sub, she closed her eyes and made a sound so reverent we both blushed. "You could sell these," she said through a laugh, hand on her chest. It was the first time anyone told me I was exceptional at something that didn't require a Scantron. My parents called it a phase and taped a business program brochure to the fridge like a ransom note. Business circled 3 times. I kept cooking. The kitchen made a different kind of sense. Onions made me cry, less than people did. When I diced, the pieces lined up. When I whisked, things actually came together. Lucas gathered trophies like magnets gather paper clips, choir solos, debate wins, honor cords. His calendar looked like a mayorship. Mine looked like a prep list. He didn't ask for the pedestal. He just didn't refuse it. At the diner, they parked me in the dish pit. The line cooks were pirates with immaculate mise en place and a religion of timing. During dead hours, they let me play with scraps. "Kids got hands," Chef Rico said once, which felt like a standing ovation. Back home, Mom would walk past my roast chicken and mutter, "If only you worked this hard at math." "Onions make me cry less," I'd mutter back. She never laughed. By 17, the house had 2 modes for me: disappointment, default, and panic. Whenever anyone asked, "So what's Donna doing after high school?" The truth? I was writing a garlic aioli recipe on a napkin while they memorized FAFSA deadlines. Every time I picked up a knife, Dad watched me like I was defusing a bomb. Every time I picked up a textbook, I watched the clock. We weren't speaking the same language. They wanted pressed suits and framed certificates. I wanted sharp knives and brown butter that smelled like you could live inside it. Then Lucas's early admission letter arrived. Stanford. The house erupted. Balloons, champagne, a catered dinner that arrived as an insult wearing a bow. I was asked to stay late at the diner so I wouldn't distract. When I came home, there was one stale cupcake in the fridge. No note. Something inside me placed itself on a cutting board and said, "Cut clean." 3 weeks later, I left. No slam, no storm. I wrote a folded note. "Thanks for the expectations. I'll be somewhere with flavor," and tucked it under the magnet that circled business. I crashed on my friend Raina's couch, collected burns and calluses, and enrolled in culinary school on a scholarship I'd won at a chili cook-off, plus everything I'd saved. Raina's dad asked, not unkindly, "You really want to chop vegetables for a living?" "I want to feed people," I said, "and not feel like a failure doing it." He nodded once, the kind of nod you keep. Culinary school was not a montage. It was 5 a.m., knife drills, burns that taught faster than lectures, and instructors who could reduce a human to a roux with a glance. Chef Duncan, yes, really, could praise with a grunt and condemn with a silence that felt like winter. If you seared it right, the room stayed quiet. That quiet became the first approval I trusted. I didn't hear from home, not once. Silence hurt until I realized it also meant freedom. No progress reports. No, why not all A's? Just whether the beurre blanc split or didn't. Whether the salmon sighed in the pan or died twice. In that honesty, I healed. On the nights I cried from exhaustion, never from shame. On the nights I smiled, it was because a sauce finally tasted like it had a point. There were other nights, too. Nights when Ethan would call from his double shift at the hospital and say, "Eat real food, not just staff meal." We weren't a whirlwind. We were a warm stove left on low. His ex, Maya, once called my culinary dreams a hobby with burns. I pretended it didn't sting. I also learned what temperature caramel burns at. Between the two, only one mattered. By the time the diploma ink dried, my hands didn't look like my hands anymore. They looked like a life I chose. Work followed. Long hours, under a Vegas-trained chef who demanded plates that spoke before they were tasted. I learned to plate like I was leaving messages. Food as art, art as invitation. Someone would look at a duck confit and ask, "Who made this?" And my heart would answer before the room did. I rented a studio apartment with a fridge I could magnet dreams onto. I pinned my first real paycheck with a whisk-shaped magnet and wrote, in grease pencil on a takeout lid, "Skillet and Ember." The name felt like a secret, like maybe, one day, it wouldn't be. Lucas's life flickered across my phone in tagged photos and captioned confetti. Proud of our Lucas. Future this, future that. I'd stare, feel the ache, and then go back to chiffinating basil, so thin it looked like grass that graduated. The old console note stayed in a shoebox under my bed. Until you take life seriously, no games. Back then, it broke me. Now, I handled it like an artifact, a promise I'd eventually rewrite. The night I booked my first independent catering gig, 12 people in a backyard under strings of hopeful lights, I burned the almond frangipani the first try and nailed it the second. When I carried the tart out, someone asked, "Who's the chef?" I said, "I am," quietly. And in that moment, even if no one in my family could hear it, I finally did. Culinary school doesn't hand out sympathy, only scars and silence. I learned that fast. 5 a.m. knife drills, 12-hour prep labs, and the constant perfume of onions and ambition. The burns healed slower than the lessons sank in, but I didn't miss a single class. Chef Duncan believed in two types of students, those who quit and those who didn't. I was determined to be the latter. When someone overcooked the salmon, Chef would shout, "This is dry enough to file paperwork." But when I seared it perfectly, all I got was a grunt. That grunt meant "I'm proud of you." That grunt became my gold star. I lived for it. Sometimes I'd come home to my tiny apartment smelling like garlic and courage and stare at the note taped above the stove, "Be worth your own approval." That's when Ethan entered the picture for real. Not as background noise, but as the quiet kind of love that doesn't need volume to exist. We'd met when I was catering a small hospital fundraiser. He was the paramedic volunteering at the first aid booth. He stayed after to help me load trays, noticed the blister on my palm, and handed me a bandage without a word. He didn't flinch at my hours, didn't try to fix my family silence, just existed there, steady, like a pulse. When I doubted myself, he'd say, "Donna, some people build walls out of pain. You're building kitchens." I didn't tell him about Maya, his ex, right away. I didn't need to. She was everywhere, mutual friends, the ghost in his social feed, the one who loved grand gestures and perfect timing. She'd once told him, "Passion's cute, but it doesn't pay the bills." The same week, he'd bought me a new chef's knife with my initials engraved. I think we both understood what that meant. When culinary school ended, the world didn't suddenly clap. It just got louder. I took a junior position under a Vegas-trained chef who demanded perfection plated at 110 degrees and screamed like the food critics were hiding in the ceiling. It was chaos. I thrived. In that heat, I found my rhythm. Cut, taste, plate, repeat. Food wasn't just food anymore. It was story. A plate could say, "I survived" louder than any speech. By 23, I was running the line, managing events, and saving every dollar I could. The dream that had started on a grease-stained napkin became something tangible. Skillet and Ember, my own catering brand. Small at first, birthdays, small weddings, corporate lunches, but it grew. Each event was a chapter. Each client who asked for my name was a sentence of redemption. Meanwhile, my parents' silence remained uninterrupted. The only glimpse of home came through Lucas's posts, his university internship, his honors medal, his smiling face next to a cake that read, "We couldn't be prouder." No one tagged me. I'd stare at the screen, the way you stare at old burns that don't hurt anymore but still itch when it rains. Ethan once asked if I ever planned to reach out. I told him, "They'll call when they need something to celebrate." He looked sad. Then he said, "When that happens, make sure you're the one holding the knife, not the napkin." I laughed, but part of me filed it away like a recipe. Then came the email. Plain subject line, "Graduation Catering Inquiry." The sender's name, Sarah Whitmore. I skimmed it casually. Small family event, buffet service, flexible budget, and then froze. Venue, Greenbrook Hall, 15 minutes from my parents' house. Graduate, Lucas Schwartz. For a long moment, the cursor blinked like a heartbeat. I didn't breathe, didn't blink, didn't rage. Then I typed back, "We'd be honored to serve." The day of the event, the venue looked like a Pinterest board had come alive. Fairy lights, satin table runners, soft music humming from rented speakers. The air smelled like sugar and pride. "Boss, you okay?" Marcus, my sous chef, asked, noticing my frozen stare through the window. "Yeah," I said, slipping on my black chef coat embroidered with the Skillet and Ember logo in gold thread. "Just family stuff." He raised an eyebrow. "The kind that eats or the kind that burns?" "Both." 4 hours before guests arrived, we were already plating the appetizers. Smoked salmon crostini, lemon aioli shrimp skewers, mini beet tartlets. Every garnish was deliberate, every flavor layered with intention. Because this wasn't just a catering gig, it was a quiet reckoning. When the first guests trickled in, laughter swelled. I heard my father's voice, loud, performative, as he greeted relatives. My mother's clipped tone followed, the same one she used when speaking to servers as if politeness cost extra. Through the slatted kitchen door, I saw Lucas glowing in a navy suit and an honor stole. Same practiced smile, same easy perfection. He looked happy, he looked loved, and I looked at the table linens I'd chosen, the centerpieces I'd arranged, the food I'd crafted, and realized every inch of that celebration bore my fingerprint. My parents didn't know. Not yet. Marcus nudged me. "They're complimenting the food already." "Good," I said. "Let them." Out front, I could hear it. The chorus of approval I'd craved as a kid. "This hummus is divine." "The lamb skewers are unreal." "Whoever made this lemon tart deserves a medal." And then my mother's voice. "We hired the best." Followed by her laugh. The same brittle, champagne crack sound that used to fill our kitchen while I did dishes alone. Marcus looked at me, wide-eyed. "That your mom?" "Yep," he smirked. Oh, this is about to be poetic. I didn't answer. I just adjusted my coat, checked the plating, and whispered to myself, "Let's serve the truth." Because sometimes revenge doesn't need fire. Sometimes it just needs a well-balanced sauce. By the time guests filled the hall, Greenbrook shimmered like it was hosting royalty. Fairy lights tangled above every table, a string quartet murmured in the corner, and my family floated at the center, radiating pride that could be bottled and sold. From behind the kitchen door, I could see it all. Dad with his half-joke about taxes, Mom with her pinched smile, Lucas with that glow, the kind that comes from never being told you're not enough. Marcus whispered beside me, "You sure you want to go out there?" Eventually, I said, tying my apron tighter, but not before dessert. I want them to taste me first. He grinned. Chef's revenge. Chef's closure, I corrected. Dinner service was flawless. My team moved like choreography. No dropped plates, no burned edges, no panic, just rhythm and precision. As trays of roasted lamb, citrus risotto, and caramelized shallots disappeared into the dining room, I stayed in the shadows, watching through the slats of the door. Every compliment that floated back into the kitchen felt like an echo from a parallel life. This chicken is heavenly. The flavors so balanced. Who's behind this catering company again? Each word was applause from strangers for the daughter they'd erased. Then I heard it, Mom's voice, lilting and proud. We hired the best. Marcus nearly choked on a laugh. You hear that, boss? Oh, I heard it, I said. I just haven't decided whether to laugh or cry. By the time dessert rolled out, lemon tarts dusted with edible flowers and honey-glazed eclairs, my pulse was a steady hum. I fixed my chef coat, adjusted my ponytail, and looked at my reflection in the steel fridge. I didn't see the girl who cried over a C in math. I saw a woman who'd built an entire world out of butter, sugar, and spite. I'm stepping out, I told Marcus. He raised his brows. You sure? I've been sure for 10 years. The dining room looked smaller up close, maybe because I'd outgrown it. Conversations dimmed as I crossed between the tables, a tray balanced on one hand. My logo glinted gold on my black chef's jacket. Skillet and ember. No one recognized me. Not at first. Then Lucas looked up. His smile froze mid-sentence. His fork hovered, motionless. Donna? He said softly, like the name had dust on it. Every head turned. My father's eyes narrowed. My mother's wine glass trembled. A cherry tomato rolled off her plate and hit the table with a tiny, ridiculous bounce. I gave a polite nod. Evening, I said. Hope everything's to your liking. You could hear the air bend. My aunt gasped. My cousin blinked like she was watching a live soap opera. Lucas finally found words. You catered this? I smiled. Technically, my team did. I just built the menu. Mom recovered first, her voice brittle. You could have told us. I shrugged. You could have invited me. The silence cracked again, sharper this time. Dad's expression barely moved, but his knuckles whitened around his glass. You should have said something, he muttered. Like what? I asked. Hi, I'm the family embarrassment who pays taxes now? Someone laughed nervously. Mom shot them a look that could curdle cream. I turned to Lucas, who looked somewhere between guilty and proud. Congratulations, I said softly. You did it. He stood awkwardly. Donna, Mom cut in, voice tight. We'll talk later. Sure, I said. I'll be in the kitchen. Again. And just like that, I turned and walked away. Steady, quiet, deliberate. Because walking away wasn't shame anymore. It was punctuation. In the kitchen, Marcus met me at the door, eyebrows high. So, how'd that taste? Bittersweet, I said. Like burnt sugar. Hurts first, then melts. But I knew this wasn't over. Not yet. An hour later, after coffee had been poured and the chatter softened into polite hums, the microphone clicked. Dad stood up, tapping his glass for silence. Here it comes. When Lucas was born, he began, we knew he'd make us proud. There it was, the same script, word for word. He listed Lucas's achievements, top of his class, leadership awards, internships, every phrase polished, rehearsed. Then he paused. But tonight isn't just about accomplishments. It's about family. I could feel my chest tighten. About the people who helped shape him, his teachers, his mother, his friends. He hesitated. For half a breath, I thought, hoped, he'd say my name. He didn't. And of course, the amazing team who provided this incredible meal tonight. Polite applause, laughter. My mother beamed, relieved. I waited for it, for my name. It never came. Something in me snapped, not loudly, not violently, just clean. I walked out, calm as a surgeon, carrying a tray of mini eclairs. People turned, murmured. Someone whispered, that's her. I set the tray down at the dessert table, right beside my father. He stopped mid-sentence. Chef Donna Schwartz, I said, voice steady, founder of Skillet and Ember. A beat. You wanted to know who made the food, I said, glancing at the guests. That would be me. A ripple of surprise passed through the crowd. Curious stares, impressed nods, genuine claps. My mom's face went pale. Dad's jaw locked. I smiled, not to them, but for myself. Enjoy the rest of your evening, I said quietly. Dessert's on the house. Then I turned, walked back through the kitchen doors, and let the applause fade behind me. It wasn't revenge, it was reclamation. For the first time, I didn't feel invisible. I felt seen by me. The rest of the night blurred like steam off a hot pan, soft, dizzy, fleeting. Behind the kitchen doors, my team packed trays in stunned silence. Marcus broke it first. "Boss," he said slowly, "that was cinematic." I almost laughed. "Yeah, what's the review?" He smirked. 5 stars. Would cater again. I grinned, but it didn't reach my chest. Inside, everything buzzed. Relief, adrenaline, ache. That was when Lucas slipped into the kitchen. No entourage, no spotlight, just him. He hesitated by the door. "Hey." "Hey." He fiddled with a dessert fork, his old nervous tic. "The food's incredible." "Glad you liked it," I said, focusing on boxing the leftover lemon tarts. Another pause. The air thickened with unsaid years. "I didn't know you were doing all this," he said finally. "I didn't know you were graduating," I replied. He winced. Fair. "I didn't invite you. Mom said it would make things awkward." I raised an eyebrow. Well, she nailed that part. He half laughed, half sighed. "You know I didn't mean to shut you out, right?" "Lucas," I said, turning toward him, "you were a kid. You grew up in a story where I was the cautionary tale. That's not on you." He looked down. "Still feels wrong." "It was," I said. "But you don't owe me guilt. Just honesty." He nodded slowly, eyes glassy. "I tell people about you, you know. The sister who could turn anything into comfort food." That made something behind my ribs crack open. "Yeah?" I asked. He smiled faintly. "When they ask who taught me to make omelets, I say you did." I blinked, throat thick. "Well," I said quietly, "you're welcome." For a moment, we just stood there, 2 adults with the same childhood ghosts. Then Mom appeared in the doorway, voice cutting through like a knife sliding against glass. "Donna." I turned slowly. "Mom?" "Can we talk?" she said, glancing at Lucas. He looked between us, hesitant. "I'll give you 2 a minute." When he left, Mom exhaled sharply, arms folded like she needed armor. "This whole thing," she began. "You could have told us." I put down the pastry bag. "Told you what? That I built something you wouldn't have approved of anyway?" Her lips thinned. "That you were catering your brother's event. Would you have hired someone else?" She hesitated. "That's not the point." "It's exactly the point," I said. "You wanted the image of success, not the truth of it." She flinched. "We were hard on you, Donna. We just wanted the best." "No," I said softly. "You wanted me to be Lucas." She blinked fast, as if I'd spoken in a foreign tongue. "We didn't know you'd turn out like this," she said at last. I nodded once. "Yeah, neither did I." For a long moment, she just looked around. The gleaming trays, the sugar-dusted eclairs, the quiet authority of a daughter she didn't recognize. "You're successful," she said finally. "I'll admit that." "Thank you," I said dryly. "You could use this to reconnect," she added quickly. "A chance to mend things." I stared at her. "You mean sweep everything under the rug and pretend the last decade didn't happen?" Her mouth opened, then shut. "I'm not angry," I continued, calmer now. "Just done needing permission to be proud." She didn't answer. Her silence was a truce, wrapped in denial. Then, softly from the hall, "Donna?" Lucas, holding 2 glasses of champagne. "Dad's making a toast. You should come." I hesitated. Mom's voice cracked. "Please." So I went. Not for her, not for him, but for the kid I used to be, the one who still wanted to believe families could learn flavor. The lights in the hall had dimmed, turning gold. Guests leaned back in their chairs, laughing softly. The hum of satisfaction filled the air. Dad stood at the center table, microphone in hand, adjusting his tie like he was about to deliver a sermon. "When Lucas was born," he began, "I remember thinking, he's going to make us proud. Here we go again." And he has. He's shown us what dedication looks like. Hard work. Focus. He gestured toward Mom. "His mother and I couldn't be happier." Lucas smiled awkwardly. Even he looked uncomfortable. "But tonight," Dad continued, "isn't just about Lucas's achievements. It's about family, the people who help shape us." I waited. My heart stayed still. He inhaled. His mother, his teachers, his friends, and of course, the wonderful team who prepared this extraordinary meal. A polite murmur of applause. Someone clapped too hard. He didn't say my name. Not once. The old ache stirred, the kind that starts in the chest and climbs to the throat. Lucas whispered something to him, but Dad shook his head and kept speaking, praising everyone, acknowledging none of it. I'd spent 10 years trying not to need that validation, but hearing my father publicly erase me again, it still hit like raw lemon on an open cut. I took a breath, stepped forward, and walked toward the table. Calm, cold, clear. Guests turned as my shoes clicked across the floor. I reached the dessert table, lifted a tray of mini eclair, and set it down in front of Dad. Compliments of the chef, I said evenly. The room froze. Chef? Someone asked. Donna Schwartz, I said, owner of Skillet and Ember. Gasps, then whispers. Someone at the far end said, You made this? It's incredible. I smiled faintly. Thank you. Dad's face twitched, something between disbelief and embarrassment. Lucas rose to his feet, clapping. It was hesitant at first. Then a few others joined in. Then more. Until the room echoed with real applause. Not the polite kind. The kind that means we see you. I didn't cry. I didn't gloat. I just nodded once, turned, and walked back toward the kitchen doors. Behind me, the clapping faded. In front of me, the stainless steel gleamed under fluorescent light. Honest, cold, mine. Later, when the last tray was packed and the hall had emptied into soft music and leftover confetti, Lucas found me again. You were amazing, he said quietly. I was hungry, I replied. That's different. He smiled. Dad's shaken. I've never seen him like that. Good, I said. Maybe it's time he tastes humility. Lucas chuckled. You're brutal. Efficient, I corrected. We stepped outside together. The air was warm, thick with summer and aftermath. Can I visit your kitchen sometime? He asked. You'd love it, I said. It smells like freedom. He laughed, then hugged me. Tight, unexpected, real. I'm proud of you, Donna, he whispered. I wish I'd said it sooner. Better now than never. And for the first time since I was 10, that sentence didn't sound like a consolation. It sounded like peace. I was loading the last crate into the van when I heard my name again. Softer, older. Donna. Dad. He stood by the curb, his tie undone, his pride dented. He looked smaller. I owe you an apology, he said. I folded my arms. I am listening. For how we treated you, for not seeing it sooner. I waited. He swallowed. You did good. Not poetic, not enough, but honest. Thanks, I said quietly. He reached into his pocket and handed me an envelope. The event planner gave me this. Inside, the final invoice, stamped paid in full, with a handwritten note at the bottom. With interest. Dad almost smiled. That from you? I shrugged. Guess someone thought it was deserved. He gave a slow nod, eyes glossy. Take care of yourself, Donna. I already am. He walked away, shoulders heavier than I remembered. I stood there under the dim streetlight, holding the envelope, feeling both full and empty all at once. It wasn't victory, it wasn't revenge. It was the end of a chapter I'd been rewriting for 15 years. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a voicemail. I didn't even have to check the caller ID. Mom's voice filled the room, soft, careful, rehearsed. Donna, I know you're upset. I understand. We'd just like to talk. Maybe dinner, just us. No speeches, no pressure. We just want to see you. Please call me back. I sat there at the kitchen counter, coffee cooling in my hand, the message looping. Not because it was shocking, because it was predictable. People always come back when the plates are full. A week passed. No calls, no texts, just quiet. Then one afternoon, a plain white envelope slid under the catering office door. My receptionist thought it was a bill. Inside was a cream-colored card with gold embossing that read, Family, where life begins and love never ends. Inside, in my mother's looping handwriting. We're sorry. Dinner's still open if you ever feel ready. Love, Mom and Dad. Taped to the bottom was a faded photo. Me and Lucas, ages 10 and 12, making gingerbread cookies. Frosting on our cheeks. Me mid-laugh. Him missing 2 front teeth. No second note, no explanations, just that. I stared at it for a long time. Not angry, not touched, just tired. It wasn't that I hadn't wanted this when I was younger. I had. I'd spent nights rehearsing whole conversations in my head. What I'd say if Dad ever admitted he was wrong. What I'd do if Mom ever hugged me without critique first. But the truth was, I didn't need those moments anymore. I'd already built my own kind of love. Out of steam and sugar, out of burns and balance. I didn't crave their approval. I'd learned how to feed myself. So I placed the photo on my fridge, next to my first paycheck, and a sticky note that read, Be worth your own approval. Then I went back to work. That Friday, we catered a small business launch. 40 guests, nothing fancy. The host was a familiar face, Ms. Reynolds, my old math teacher. When she saw me balancing a tray of canapes, her eyes widened. Donna Schwartz, you're the owner? I nodded, smiling. Skillet and Ember, it's been a while. She laughed. I remember your parents, they were intense about your grades. That's one word for it, I said lightly. She chuckled, then added, You know, I gave you that C in math. I blinked. Really? She nodded. You didn't flunk. You just learned differently. I remember you stayed after class to ask why the formula worked, not just how. I thought, this girl thinks like a builder, not a calculator. The compliment hit harder than expected. I hope someone noticed the effort, she said gently. I looked down at my tray. Not then. She tilted her head. Maybe now's better timing. That night, after everyone left, I came home to silence, the kind that used to hurt but now felt earned. I pulled out the old note from the shoebox under my bed. Until you take life seriously, no games. Back then, it felt like a verdict. Now, it looked like raw material. I picked up a small craft knife, the same kind I used to slice cake boxes clean, and carefully split the paper in half. On one side, it read, "Until you take life seriously." On the other, "No games." I kept the first half, taped it on my fridge beside the gingerbread photo. The other half, I sealed in an envelope and mailed back to my parents' address. No return name, no message. Just the fragment that read, "No games." 2 days later, a text from Lucas popped up. A photo of Dad holding the note, brow furrowed, lips pressed. He doesn't get it yet, but he's thinking about it. I smiled. That was enough. A few weeks later, a local magazine interviewed me for a feature titled Resilience in Small Business. The reporter asked, "What kept you going during the hardest years?" I paused, thinking of late-night shifts, burns on my wrists, the silence after every family dinner I wasn't invited to, the smell of yeast and ambition that never quite left my hands. Then I smiled. "A C in math," I said, "and a locked door." She laughed, thinking I was joking. I didn't correct her. Later that night, I walked into my kitchen. Small, warm, humming with quiet pride. On the counter sat a fresh batch of lemon tarts, cooling under soft light. I plated one for myself, sprinkled powdered sugar, and took the first bite. Sweet, sharp, honest. For the first time in my life, I wasn't eating to fill an emptiness. I was tasting proof. The doorbell rang. Ethan, holding takeout and flowers. He grinned. "You working or celebrating?" "Both," I said, smiling. "Come in. There's dessert." He leaned against the counter, eyes soft. "You look peaceful." "I am," I said. Finally. Outside, the city buzzed. Inside, everything was quiet. And in that quiet, I realized something simple and profound. I'd spent years chasing permission to feel worthy. Now I gave it to myself. Fade out. Skillet and ember gleamed on the window in soft gold. And behind it, the woman once called a failure learned that some stories aren't about winning. They're about rewriting what it means to be full.